Hello, welcome to Mod 6, the last lesson portion of the course. One thing I wanted to go through with you guys with this was two different situations. Ifs, not the same ifs we did last time, like count ifs or sum ifs or anything, but different scenarios with ifs, ands, and ors. So other logical statements. In addition to that, there's PMT or payment formulas, IPMT for interest payments and PPMT for principal payments. Quite possibly, the payment functions are some of my favorite lessons to ever teach, just because it's so applicable to everything you guys can do from here on out in every aspect of your life. Cars, college, houses, anything. So let me get started on the ifs first here. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, and I kind of preset this up here. I had a file with a whole bunch of information, and it says Dr. Holly or blood tests. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a logical function, and you'd start out with an equals because it's a function. And actually before that, you can, just to show you guys, inside of here, you have different pieces inside of here that we used before. Like this one, for example, is statistics and everything. This one right here is logical. The logical uses ands, ifs, if errors, ors, things like that, okay? So what we're going to end up using first is the or for Dr. Holly or blood test. So you can either click it from here, Formulas tab, Function Library, Logical, and click or. And the dialog box pops up. And this is nice because it tells you what's going on. The first statement, I need it to be Dr. Holly. So for this particular row, row 6, if Dr. Holly, I need that to be Dr. Holly. If that equals, again, in quotes. Remember how we said it before. Things have to be in quotes. And be careful, because things have to be spelled, exactly correct, right? So if Dr. Holly, and it says it's true, so I typed it right, there's no spelling errors, or there's a blood test going on. So, or that particular cell, because I'm in row 6, is equal to, and again, spell it correctly, BLOOD space lowercase TEST. I always do everything exactly the same. That is false. Why? Because it said MRI. That's okay. Then put true. Why is it saying the answer is going to come out true? Well, it's one or the other. The first part came out true. It is Dr. Holly. So it doesn't even matter what this thing is. As long as one of them is true, the whole thing comes out to be true because it's or. Okay? Now, because I cell referenced it and I did not absolute reference it, when I drag this down, this is talking about row 10, row 12, right? So all these things are going to be still able to be used. So again, if I drag this down all the way, you're going to see all these falses and trues come up. So anything that's a true, again, here's a true. It's either true because it's Dr. Holly or it's a blood test and it was Dr. Holly. Here's true for Dr. Holly again. True for a blood test, but not Dr. Holly. One or the other. Okay, so that's the or function. This one here, I have an and. Now, and is very different. And actually, just to make this, well, I'll wait. And is very different in that both of the logical statements, or if you have more, all of the logical statements must be true in order for this thing to spit out a true function. So again, you can go to logical, and go to and, or if you know what you're doing, equals AND, and start with the first logical statement. What is the first thing I need to have happen? And again, if you want the dialog box launcher, open up the f of x, and it shows up. If you don't worry about it. Just start typing. So the first thing, if this is Dr. Holly, so that equals, quote, Dr. Holly, close your quotes, comma is moving to the second logical statement, and I want to know if this is equal to blood test. Okay, and again, I'm going to close the parentheses at that point because I only have two statements that I'm actually working on. So the first one and the second one must be true. When I press this, this says false. Why? Because it's Dr. Holly is true, but this part's false. So a true and a false gives me a false statement. If I drag it down a few, this one says true. How come? Because not only is it Dr. Holly, it is also a blood test. Okay? Same thing with this one. This one's a blood test, which is great, but it's not Dr. Holly, so therefore it comes out false. All right? True, blood test, Dr. Holly. So the AND function is actually extremely convenient as well. If you have multiple things going on. And again, it does not have to be one or the other, or for two logical statements. You guys can actually use this. Come on. You guys can actually use this for, well, up to 255 different statements. So where am I going here? I'm going to say highlight cells rule, text that contains. Let's make this thing, if it is false. Okay. So you can see the difference right here. There's a heck of a lot more falses in the AND because both things need to be true for that thing to actually work. There's a lot more trues for the OR because as long as one of them works, you're going to get a positive result. Dr. Holly, 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 even though none of these things are counting for blood test, but it still works for the OR, does not work for the AND. Okay? So last, I'm going to do a couple more here. There's an if. So if Dr. Holly and a blood test. So now I have an if statement and an AND statement all in one. That's okay. It's called nested statements. N-E-S-T-E-D. Nested. Okay? They're one statement or one function inside of another function. So what ends up happening is we start out with an if function, and we have a logical test that we're going to do. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to say if this is true and this is true, then I can have it give a value if it's true, and if it's false, I'm going to give a different value. So if this one and this one is true, that means my first logical test is I'm going to input an AND function inside of here. So I'm going to type in AND. And now look at this, it moved to an AND function right here. Okay, it no longer says if anymore over here, now this is AND. And if you want to see this here, AND for the functions. If I click on this if, it's going to go back to the if and say, hey, the first logical test, you're putting an AND in here. You didn't finish it, so it's not valid. So if I click into this portion and I start working with the AND, I want this to equal, again, Dr. Holly, and so I'm inside the AND function. If this confuses you, again, click on the word and it'll put you in the AND function arguments box. Okay, and this one has to be equal to blood test. Okay, so once I'm done with this piece, now I click back to the if. This is all in the first statement. If this whole thing ends up being true, what do you want to spit out if it's true? I don't know. Yes, sir. Who knows? Whatever. If it's false, say not a match. Okay? And again, whatever you want to say has to be in quotes. Okay? So this one says not a match. How come? Remember, the AND is false, so this one's not going to be working. Anything where this is an AND function here is going to say the same thing as this. So what this ends up doing is it combines two different things in one. Okay? All of these should say not a match that match up with this. This is the only true, so this is a yes, sir. This is the only true, so this is the only yes, sir. Okay? Because it still is an AND function. The only thing that you do with it if is it gives you an opportunity to say something that you want. Don't use this. Do use this, whatever it is. So that's why this ends up being the exact same lineup here. So the if function allows you to put a message in just using an and, says true or false. That's it. Okay. And this last one over here that I'm going to show you guys is called if error. Let me just move that back. I didn't want it to go that large. But if error, Dr. Holly and blood test. So if there's an error, if it's not going to come out right, then it's going to potentially put a different message inside of here. And what that ends up being is Well, it puts a dash. If something does not work right, if something is screwed up, it will put a message in there that's an error. So equals if error. And as you're doing this, you're not really doing too much. So an if error, you're going to say if this and comes up true. Value, if it's an error, say sorry. So the fault, whoops, hang on a second. Sorry, if this thing is equal to true, the value if error is sorry. So it comes up false. There was no error technically. So it's just saying, is it true? Is it false? What's going on? So the error ends up saying if it's sorry, if it can't read this thing. So if it comes up completely blank with all these things, it ends up wiping it out. Okay. So if error is okay, it's more for calculations when you're doing things with numbers. So let's say you had say a number divided by 0, for example. Let me put a 0 in here. Equals if error. So the value is this divided by this, which can't happen, right? If error, whoops. Okay. So it says whoops. How come? Because we cannot divide by 0, right? That's what this is actually saying. Take 400 divided by 0. Not going to happen, so there's a mistake. There's an error. So if I don't do this, I'm going to copy this really quick. I'm going to say copy, paste. So this one works. How come? Something divided by true. True is actually a 1. I know it sounds funny, but a true comes up as a 1. A 0 comes up as a false in a computer system. They're all bits, 1s and 0s, binary code. So true is 1, false is 0. But anyway, what I wanted to show you guys is if I just did this, equals this divided by the 0, it's going to come up as a divide by 0 error. There's the error symbol that I'm going to avoid by doing an if error. Okay. So this one again, if I'm going to drag it up, there is an error because I can't do this. However, instead of showing me that divide by 0 error, it's just going to say whoops because I made a mistake. It's an error. That's what it shows. Okay. That's the if portion of this piece. So ands, ors, ifs, if errors, that's all inside of here. And again, nested functions, if you want to do these things like this, and is inside a logical statement for an if. If it's true, spit this out. If it's false, spit this out. Okay. If you don't like these things, open up the dialog box. Right now I clicked on and, so I'm in the and. I click on the if, it puts me in the if functions arguments box. Okay. And it will always tell you what's going on over here as far as whether or not you're doing it right. If you make a mistake ahead of time, this will not work. You'll see an NA, a value, a 0, or an error, anything inside of here, you'll see the mistake. Okay, so that's the big key about that part. I'm going to set this one off and be done with this one, and then we'll come back to do the PMT or the payments. Okay? Be right back.